Hi folks, it's Ashley here. In this video I just want to cover a few things in relation to the plague doctor. I would like to get into this further and devote an entire video to the Black Death, aka the bubonic plague outbreak that the Jews admitted to, folks. Okay, the Jews confessed without torture. Some of them were tortured, but many of the initial confessions came from Jews who were not tortured. And then the subsequent confessions that implicated other Jews by Jews, okay, there was a little bit of torture to invoke, or not invoke, but to bring out those the confessions. But many of the initial confessions of Jews in relation to the Black Death came without torture, folks. And there were actually a few non-Jews that were implicated as well, that were also held accountable. So I just want to point that out. But I want to show you that they want you to believe that this is just a kind of like they never really explain to you why this plague doctor is depicted like this, with this beak, I'll tell you what my theory is. I believe that this is a Jew. I have evidence of it. And that this was a mask, okay? And this is kind of like an over-exaggeration of what the plague doctor was. But we know Jews typically they tend to have, not in all cases, but in many cases, they have large noses. And I believe that the plague doctor likely had a large nose, and this was a mask he was wearing. As a previous nursing student, we had a mask fitting test, and you had to do it regularly. It wasn't like you do it once and that's it, but it's very important that you have a mask that fits tightly and perfectly to your specific face. And I believe that's exactly what this was. And the plague doctor was Jewish. I'm going to show you evidence of that. So, if you know anything about the plague doctor, Dr. Schnabel was one of the plague doctors. Okay? Okay, it says here, copper engraving of Dr. Schnabel. Okay? Let me just go back to pull it up. I.e. Dr. Beek, a plague doctor in the 17th century in Rome. A plague doctor was a medical physician who treated victims of the bubonic plague. It's funny because the majority of the physicians in relation to the bubonic plague were Jews, yet there were no Jews that I can find that were affected by the bubonic plague, yet they were predominantly in the physician role, which I find very interesting. But to show you that Dr. Schnabel is a Jewish surname, it's of Ashkenazi origin, and I'll show you that. Here we go. Okay, and this is according to Ancestry. Right? Of Ashkenazi origin, folks, okay? It's a nickname for a gossip or a glutton. That's very interesting also, because we know that these characteristics, gossiping and gluttony, is typical of Jews. Anyway, and interesting enough, it says here, from Middle High German Schnabel, German Schnabel, beak, mouth, okay? This is not a coincidence. Okay, it's not a coincidence at all. But I'm going to prove it further. The Jews even depicted themselves. They themselves depicted themselves looking exactly like this right here. I stumbled across this manuscript, Bird's Head Haggadah. Okay? This gets very interesting, folks. Let's take a look at how the Jews depicted themselves. Okay? Let's keep going and take a look at some of these photos, shall we? Does that not look like this to you, folks? Okay, beak. Beak. Okay, a Jewish man, woman, and a child shape and prick holes in handmade matzos in preparation for baking. Here's another depiction. Detail of a bird-headed Jewish man placing matzo in an oven. Also very interesting, right? Like the whole oven thing. Just saying. Here we have another image depicting the same. Okay, so detail of the Exodus from Egypt. Bird-headed Jews. Bird-headed Jews. No, it's just Jews. They're not bird-headed, folks. They're just Jews. That's all. That's it. Okay? Like, if this isn't evidence, folks, that this was just Jewish, folks. This is all this was. They don't want you making the connections, though. They don't want you making these connections, because it all starts to make sense. Wake up.